Welcome to Her Fantasy Football. You can hear us on Blog Talk Radio /Her Fantasy Football and on iTunes. Make sure to subscribe to us on herfantasyfootball.com so you can get our newsletter. We will give you our 4 ingredients for our fun, free FanDuel game Diced. And a friendly reminder, make sure to tune in to our radio show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 9 to 11 Eastern on Saturday night. Also, you can chat with us on Twitter at Her Fantasy FB. I'm your host, Courtney Kirby.
And I'm Ashley Williams.
And I'm Brandon Marianne Lee. What was that storm?
And no, we are not on an airplane.
What the hell?
We're not going through turbulence. Ashley just decided to adjust her microphone at the beginning of the show.
I always forget. And then, of course, I'm
just mute it.
So I was traveling. I know, but I'm on my travel mic, and I don't have the mute option on my travel mic. And then, of course, I saw all this fuzz on it. And, Type A me was like, ew, I need to pick that hair off.
Well, what's Type A you going to do when we're editing?
I'm just going to leave it because it's part of the show.
Good for you. Yeah. Well, it's week 15. Playoffs. It's very exciting. Just so everybody knows, because I know you guys are deeply concerned. Ashley did not make the family playoffs.
Nor did Brandon.
No,
right? No.
Yeah.
I had a bye last week, thank God. I mean, I didn't set my lineup, but all of my top players were like the worst weeks of their life. So it was good.
And this will be the first year in a long time the trophy is not in New York.
I know. It's usually me and my husband.
It has been, not usual.
Changes are coming.
Changes are coming. It's coming back to Colorado. We don't know where yet, but it's coming back to Colorado. Well, let's get into this games, you guys. We'll help you set your lineups. It shouldn't be too tough this week because, as we said, you play the guys that got you here, and it's week 15, so you should know who that is by now. But we'll try to help you fill in those last roster spots for you. Los Angeles Rams and Seattle Seahawks will be the Thursday night game, and you're most likely not filling those empty spots with a Ram. But we'll just touch on them real fast. Jeff Fisher, the coach, was fired on Monday after 5 years with the Rams. What does this mean for the Rams? Sometimes when the coach gets fired, things get changed up. I don't think that's really going to happen. The only thing that might happen is Gurley might touch the ball a little bit more, which is good. So if you own Gurley, you will most likely put him in that flex spot as you had probably the whole season at this point. But hopefully he'll get more touches than he has before. Last week, he did have the best game of the season since week 5 with 83 total yards and a touchdown. So fingers crossed. Instead of maybe that 7-9 fantasy range he tends to be in, maybe he'll move up to like the 8 to 10 fantasy points this week. It is a bit of a tough matchup. You can pass on Seattle. I know Kenny Britt didn't score last week, but he did see 12 targets, and he had 7 receptions. So in PPR, he's still completely relevant. I have him ranked at 35. So if you have 3 wide receivers that place higher than that, I guess don't play him. But if you're rolling with the Kelvin Benjamin, Randall Cobbs, Allen Robinsons of the world still, stop yourself, put Britt in. He's a better play. Everyone else on LA is a waste of time talking about.
All right.
The Britt love is continuous with you, and I like it.
Absolutely. It's true.
Well, the good news is Derek Carr owners were not alone last week.
Yeah.
There were a lot of quarterbacks that had really bad performances. Russell Wilson was one of them. So he was only 22 of 39 passes for 204 yards. He had a touchdown, but he had 5 interceptions against Green Bay. He only had 5.5 points. Outrageous. And he has not done well the last 3 weeks, with 15 points being his highest score within those 3 weeks. It doesn't look a whole lot better this week. The Rams give the 15 fewest fantasy points. Again, like you said, I'm a little nervous about the firing of Jeff Fisher and how this is going to fire that team up. And Russell Wilson didn't play very well against the Rams earlier this season. Now, usually he's got a little bit of a difference between when he plays at home versus away. But this offense is just not quite getting it together with the Seahawks. So I don't love him as an option. I think you need to look elsewhere. And it's scary when wide receiver Tanner McVoy, I don't know his name, all right, was the highest scoring player on the team in total with 10.1 points, a guy we've never even really heard of just because he got the lone touchdown. Thomas Rawls didn't do any better. He rushed 12 times for 67 yards, was just okay. The Rams give up the 14th most fantasy points. So that's probably a decent situation. But again, I just don't know if you can trust it. And then Doug Baldwin, he has not been able to bounce back. This is 3 weeks in a row of absolute horrific points from him in terms of what you were expecting out of a top wide receiver. He had 11 targets, but he only had 46 yards. The Rams give up the 8th most fantasy points, so this is the best matchup that we're going to see out of it. But again, these wide receivers have been incredibly inconsistent. I think you need to look elsewhere, even though it is a decent matchup. The same goes for Tyler Lockett. We're seeing a little bit of production out of him in terms of 40 yards, but again, not fantastic. And Jimmy Graham only was targeted 4 times for 16 yards. Now, the Rams give the 5th fewest points to tight ends. And again, it's a bad matchup for Russell Wilson, so I'm not really seeing a whole lot of chemistry for this game. And I think as a whole, we're looking entirely away from the Seahawks this week.
Scary.
Other than their defense. You can play them and feel very okay about it.
Yes. All right. Saturday. There's a Saturday game, guys. It's exciting.
Is it?
No, it's not. It's not. It's actually during our radio show on SiriusXM, so it's not like the best timing, but whatever. We'll move past it. And it's the Dolphins and the Jets, so
We didn't even discuss our radio show yet. This is exciting. This is a good day.
we haven't discussed our radio show.
Yeah. I mean, us.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. But
I mentioned it at the top of the show.
No, yeah. We did not do your job. No, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry.
Right. No. I totally understand what you're saying. Well, I'm gonna get on the Brandon train from last week and talk about the weather.
Jump on it.
The weather outside is frightful. 'Tis the season. 'Tis the season.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm doing my twinkle fingers with that. Anyways, there will be rain and or snow on Sunday for this matchup. That is not going to help a team that just lost their starting quarterback, even if it was just Tannehill. It does mess things up.
Still kind of
I don't know.
Tanny.
Maybe it'll be better. Can't get too much worse, can it? Possibly. You're starting Miami's defense if you own them. We have them ranked number 5. Matt Moore will be the guy who's stepping in that quarterback position for Miami, which does not help the wide receivers that are already scary to play. Parker is off the injury report, but he didn't look right last week. He just wasn't right. Landry has had 8 fantasy points in standard leagues the last 2 weeks. That's it. So you're probably going to deduct 2 points from that. Now with Moore in, so that's 6. So I can't imagine that's good enough for you. Stills has gone good game, bad game. I know Brandon hates when I say that, but it's been since week 5.
I don't hate
literally good game, bad game, good game, bad game, and this is supposed to be a bad week. So I'm going to go ahead and say, although I think he may be your best bet, maybe not, this week is not going to be his thing. And when he has a bad week, it's between 1 and 3 fantasy points. So it's like really bad. So look elsewhere for a wide receiver in deep leagues. If I had to put my money on anyone to have a good week this week, it's obviously Jay Ajayi, the one decent player on this team. I know that he hasn't done well the last 2 weeks, but those games were against tough defenses. So we're just going to put them behind us. Hopefully we'll have another 20 touches this week. Every time they give Ajayi the ball 20 or more times, the Dolphins win the game. So hopefully they know that, and they will give the ball more. The last time the Dolphins played the Jets, Ajayi had 19 fantasy points in the standard league. So the ceiling is high. You can start the Miami's defense, which I already told you. I got so excited because that's the only thing that's exciting to talk about. And some might say that Deion Sims becomes fantasy irrelevant with Tannehill out. But I think Moore will be looking to dump the ball off So Sims may be the guy who benefits from that. He has had 2 touchdowns in the last 3 games. So if you're really stretching for something special, you've been riding the Dennis Pitta, Jason Witten train. You know,
That's a sad train.
It is. Deion Sims might be the caboose you need at the end of the season. Just throwing it out there. All right, the Jets.
So Matt Forte got injured. So he had an MRI this week, and unfortunately the news is not great. It's a torn meniscus, which is not the worst thing in the world, but it's also not great. But then we're also hearing that he hyperextended his knee. He is day-to-day. It is not looking good that he's going to sign up this week. But Bilal Powell did do fairly well. He rushed 29 times and he had 145 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he was the highest scoring player for this team with, I want to say it was around like 29 points, something crazy like that. But you know, the situation is we got Bryce Petty. It's Miami gives it the 14th fewest points, but that's okay because again, we aren't going to be relying so much on our rookie quarterback. Well, not rookie, but in terms of his first year actually starting in this sense to be the hub of that. I think they're going to really rely on Bilal Powell. I don't think Matt Forte is going to go. But if we're looking at a wide receiver, it would be Robbie Anderson. We talked a little about last week the fact that was who Bryce Petty seemed to feel comfortable with, and the pattern again laid itself out last week. He was targeted 11 times. He caught 6 of them for 99 yards. He is the person that Bryce Petty feels the most comfortable with. Brandon Marshall is being covered. He's being covered by the top corners. He's injured, as he's been struggling with all season long. He was only targeted 5 times, less than half what Anderson was targeted. It was only for 33 yards. He's been limited in practice. So this is an option that you just need to stay away from because, again, he's getting the coverage, he is injured, and he is not who Bryce Petty feels the most comfortable with.
Doesn't Bryce Petty seem like a guy that should have like a sweater wrapped around his shoulders? Doesn't it sound like a name that's like Bryce Petty?
Like, is it the name?
The country club. Yeah, the name. Yeah, not him in general, just like the name. Bryce Petty.
Sure, I can see that.
I don't know. Anyways, I digress.
Well, I think Brandon Marshall for me he's third on this list because Enunwa at least got 7 targets compared to, Marshall's 5, which is, way less than the 11 that Anderson got. So for me, Marshall needs to be your third option. Anderson's your top option right now. And then Enunwa, who had 7 only for 29 yards. So that's kind of your order. Now, again, it's an okay matchup. Not a fantastic match. I think of the 11th most fantasy points to wide receivers, which would be great in normal situations, but we're dealing with Bryce Petty as our quarterback. So hopefully you can look elsewhere. But if you have to go one way, Anderson's the guy that I'm choosing for this week.
All right, let's move to those Sunday 1:00 Eastern games. The Green Bay Packers, the Chicago Bears, the Packers. Weather update. There could be blowing snow with a low of -1. What? It could be the coldest game in NFL history. The coldest game in NFL history.
That's without the wind chill.
Oh,
that's
so good.
Just degrees in Chicago.
So bad.
That's so bad.
So bad. So bad. So bad. But listen, you're still playing Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams. Nelson had 41 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Adams had 104 yards and a touchdown. I think you might want to reverse those stats. But last week against Seattle, Adams was targeted 16 times last week. Last time they played the Bears in week 7. Both players are hot and should be in your lineups this week. Ty Montgomery is a perfect flex to me. Coach McCarthy finally came out and said that Montgomery is a running back. Yeah, no bleep. Of course he is. So funny to me. Check your settings to make sure that you can use them the way that you want to, whether that's a wide receiver or a running back. Not the best matchup for a running back, but he catches the ball too. So I think he still could be in your lineup in that flex spot. Green Bay Packers, we have them ranked number 11th, so they're right there. Same with Mason Crosby, ranked number 11th. And on the bench, Jared Cook, Randall Cobb, James Starks, and Christian Michaels are all on the bench. It's playoffs, people. Don't throw it up in the air and hope it lands on his feet. Look elsewhere. These are not your people you need to be going with. Chicago Bears. Alshon Jeffrey is done with his suspension. He's back. Didn't test positive. He's still available in 25% of leagues, so go pick him up. The Packers give up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. I don't love that Barkley isn't used to Jeffrey, but he isn't hurt, and it's a good matchup, and Jeffrey's is good, so I say, I know it's risky, but I kind of like him. Howard has been the only one that has been consistently good the last 3 weeks. It's a good matchup for him. R. Kelly had 31 fantasy points against Green Bay 2 weeks ago, and DeMarco Murray had 26 points 3 weeks ago against Green Bay. So the only thing I fear is that the Bears will get behind and abandon the run. But I think he probably will get enough fantasy points for you before that happens. So I'm still starting him. We have him ranked number 10th. And I'm not playing anyone else. It's bad weather. I'm scared. It's going to be freezing.
A lot of bad weather this week.
A lot of bad weather.
Real bad.
Going into the Cleveland Browns, the Buffalo Bills.
Speaking of bad weather, Buffalo. The only Cleveland Brown that I'm starting is Isaiah Crowell. Last week, he had a bounce-back game, the one that we thought he would have and hoped that he would have against the Cincinnati Bengals, 113 rushing yards on only 10 carries. That's bananas. The Bills have given up 7 rushing touchdowns in their last 5 games, 16 rushing touchdowns on the season, which is the second most in the league, just behind San Francisco. Nice. Other than that, though, I do not trust RG3 in the cold or in the heat, really. I don't trust him at all.
I don't trust him in the alley. I don't trust him in the bar. I don't trust him anywhere.
No.
Green eggs and ham.
I don't alley and bar. Things went dark fast for you, Courtney.
Yeah,
Wow.
wow. Where's that the first thing that came to mind?
Yeah.
I trust nobody in an alley, turns out.
Yeah. No. 0 people.
It's true.
Zero
It's
people.
true.
Zero.
It's 100% success
I don't even
rate.
trust myself in the alley.
Now I'm going to be like, why am I in an alley?
Yeah.
Duke Johnson went for 24 yards on 4 carries, caught 1 pass of 21 yards. It just hasn't happened for him. And I'm worried about next year, too. If you're in a keeper league, I say throw the fish back in.
Oh, that makes me
Agreed.
sad.
I'm
All
sorry.
right.
Last
Bill-
week, Pryor
sorry, go
caught
ahead.
1 pass off of 3 targets, but Cord Coleman only caught 3 passes off of 11 targets for 26 yards. Yowza! Sorry, I just wanted to say that, and then we can move on to the Bills. Sorry.
No, it's okay because
There's like some weird resentment there between RG3 and Terrell Pryor that there is so few targets to Pryor.
Well, he was also
Corey Coleman.
blanketed. I mean, they were defending against Pryor. It was a lot of things. Remember the whole garbage can with Adam Jones afterwards being like, this is what Terrell Pryor is. Terrell Pryor was talking smack, and Hugh Jackson came out and said he needs to stop doing that. There was a little drama. Listen, there's always drama when there's RG3. I don't
That's
know.
right.
I don't think it's
that's
resentment.
right.
I
He
just think this
brings
is who they
it.
are.
Yeah, exactly. He can't help it. It's all around him. All right, the Bills. The Bills are fighting for their coach's job right now. Watkins came out today saying he wants Rex Ryan to stay. Even though it will be bad weather, I think this team will be united to beat the worst team in the NFL. I mean, they've got to, right? I mean, it has to happen. Therefore, you are starting LaShawn McCoy as usual. Cleveland gives it the second most fantasy points to running backs, and McCoy has had double-digit fantasy points in the last 5 games. Sammy Watkins remains questionable. He did not practice on Wednesday, but I am not concerned about whether he will play or not. He had a touchdown last week and 54 yards and played almost every snap. I have him ranked super high. I think he's going to have a really good game. The second the Bills say something about Gillislee, screw you, media, mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't
Public
get
enemy
any
number
hits,
one.
Public enemy number 1. I still believe that he is an excellent flex in deeper leagues. I still think that you should go ahead and put him in. I think people are going to take him out because he didn't do anything for him last week, and then he's going to get another touchdown this week. It's Cleveland, you guys, so just
Agreed.
settle down. The Buffalo Bills defense, obviously, against Cleveland, we have him number 3. Charles Clay had his first touchdown of the season last week. But don't get cute, people. Ride the tight end that got you here. If you take out last week, Clay is averaging 1.4 fantasy points the last 6 weeks previously. So I get it. It's a good matchup. He found the end zone. But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden it's going to turn around. It doesn't. It doesn't. So I guess if you're in a super deep league and you want to take a risk, sure. But because of the matchup, but I'm not doing it. I'm staying away. All right, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens. I'm getting all my teams done at the beginning here. Why not? It's done. Zach Ertz is the best options for the Eagles on the right now. And although it says that it's a bad matchup on paper, 2 tight ends have had double digits in the last 3 weeks. So I would still roll with him. Jordan Matthews is listed as questionable, but should be good to go against a bad pass defense. The Ravens give up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. 3 out of the last 6 games, both the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 had double digits. Darrell Green Beckham is back. I mean, only play him if you're in a really, really deep league and you have no other options. But that fact is there that the wide receiver 2 has had double digits as well. As far as my sleepers, Darren Sproles is still listed as questionable after getting knocked out last weekend.
Yeah.
Very scary. He has been a solid play the last few weeks, but you might want to find another option. This is the worst matchup, and the concussions can be hard to recover from. It's just a weird situation. You can keep an eye on the injury report, but I would look somewhere else. That leaves Ryan Matthews, you guys, to take the load with Wendell Smallwood on IR. Again, really bad matchup. It's Baltimore that gives up the fewest fantasy points to running backs. Only 2 running backs have had double-digit games since the Ravens bye in Week 8. Hopefully he can find the end zone for you and get that sweet 7 fantasy points that he always likes to get us.
Boom.
Boom. But it may not happen this week, and it may just be like 60 yards. Just more yards than he's gotten in a long time, too. So, I mean, let's be honest with each other. Philly's defense is ranked number 16th. And, of course, Carson Wentz is on the bench. He's not to be trusted. As far as the Baltimore Ravens, there's 2 things looking up for them. It's called Justin Tucker and the defense. That offense is a little dicey. Steve Smith has struggled the last 3 weeks, but this is a good matchup for him. I have him ranked 37th. So if that's good enough for you to play him, then I would do that. The Eagles give up the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers. Mike Wallace has had between 50 and 60 yards the last 5 games. It's not awesome. He hasn't gotten in the end zone. Again, if you're in a 16-person league and you have that flex spot open and you need 5 points, he probably won't get you any less. Sleepers, Kenneth Dixon is the best option for the running backs, but the Eagles have been really good against the run as of late. He could get 8 to 10 fantasy points, but it is risky seeing how he's still sharing the ball with West. I mean, he's clearly the better back than West, and he is going to be the number 1 guy, but
he also stunk, though.
Yeah.
He also is bad, too. Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, let's call it what it is.
Bad.
I mean,
he wasn't that bad last week.
Wasn't great.
Well, he had that false start, and then he had what was the other thing that he messed up?
I see what you're saying. Not in fantasy points, but in general.
Yeah, like football. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just being a pessimist. He just looked like a rookie to me. I was like, oh, cute.
Brandon, you need to settle down. We're talking about Baltimore Ravens, okay? Wow. The Baltimore Ravens. When we were talking about the 49-year-old on the field is the only player you can actually play and the kicker, we're getting desperate, okay? And that brings me to my bench, people. Dennis Pitta did him again. 1.8 fantasy points. Love it. I hope all those Pitta people out there who got so many fantasy points the week before started him and lost. I hope it's none of my listeners because you should know better. But for everybody else out there,
do you Pitta them?
I don't.
Oh, I did it. I gotta have one each week.
What up, Dad?
Not only that, but Philly gives up the 2nd fewest fantasy points to tight ends. So even if his name wasn't Dennis Pitta, I still wouldn't be starting him this week. We're gonna take a short break. We'll be back with the Tennessee Titans and the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, Ashley, here we go. I'm done talking. So let's get into our 5th matchup with the Tennessee Titans and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Now I get to talk 2 in a row, and then we'll get to incorporate Brandon here. So DeMarco Murray, again, he's got the workload. He rushed 21 times for 92 yards and a touchdown. We knew that he would do well against the Broncos. We said that you can run against the Broncos, and he scored. But that's also not a horrible matchup. And again, this is DeMarco Murray. So you are playing him no matter what. It is what it is. You're playing him. We don't think twice about it. Marcus Mariota is another one of these gems like Derek Carr and Russell Wilson, who only got you 7.32 points last week. We told you
played
not to play
Denver.
him. I know, I was like, we told you not to play him. We told you it's the absolute worst matchup against the Broncos, and he did exactly what we expected. 6 of 20 for 88 yards. Again, only 7.32 points. It was his second worst game of the year by a long shot. But again, this is a better matchup. Kansas City gives up the 17th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, so he should be able to bounce back. Now, Derrick Henry is one that we've talked about a little bit in terms of the fact that he's getting more and more carries. So DeMarco Murray, and this is to keep Murray fresh. We've seen over the last, I think 4 or 5 games here, we have 16 touches, then none, then 9 touches, then none, then 8 touches, then a bye week, now 12. So we're starting to see within the last 2 games here a bit more of a progression that he's going to be increasing his load. I think he's someone you can look at if you need 4 to 5 points. That's all he's good for. But he's been pretty consistent to get you the 4 or 5. So again, I think it's an interesting matchup. This is only if you're desperate in seriously deep leagues. He's someone that you can maybe potentially consider. Delaney Walker did you no favors last week. He was targeted 7 times, but only had 30 yards and only caught 2 of them. Kansas City, very stout against tight ends. You get the 3rd fewest fantasy points. If you've got a better matchup, if there's other guys out there, I would recommend doing it. I'm not sure I see him doing particularly well against the Chiefs. And then we got Rashard Matthews. Bad game again. He only had 3 targets. Didn't think he would do well against. We've got a very tough secondary against the Broncos. The Chiefs give up the 5th most fantasy points. So you should see the bounce back that you're hoping for this week. And I think you are full steam to play Rashard Matthews and feel incredibly good about it.
I hope so, because I'm going to put him in and kick your husband's.
Do it.
Do it. Chiefs.
I hope he's not listening. Anyway.
He's totally listening.
He's going to be like, why don't you support me? We're a unit. We're a family. Don't you want our house? I do. But, we're all family.
I just want to keep
nothing.
this. I want to keep this trophy, though.
Yeah, well, you don't deserve it this year for sure. Your husband almost did, but he fell hard.
He did.
But Ashley's husband,
he didn't listen to me.
Doesn't deserve it.
He started freaking Allen Robinson. He texted me while I'm on the Bleacher Report show on Sunday morning game day. And he's like, I'm thinking about putting in Allen Robinson. And I said, no, don't do it.
For who?
And then he goes, for Dontrell Inman. Dontrell Inman and I can't remember who the other person was, but either way, they both did well.
Doesn't even matter.
It doesn't matter. And he had already not started Tyreek Hill. So he's already ignoring me. So he's like, I'm thinking about doing it. I said, no, don't do it. So then he said, yeah, but updates are saying that he's going to be targeted a lot because Alan Hearns is out. I didn't know if you knew that. And I was like, okay, first of all, yeah, I knew that. Second of all, I am the updates. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, no, you don't understand. Like what do you think we do?
I
was
am
so...
the updates.
Quote of the night.
What do you even do? What? So anyway, he loses, and I was like,
anybody who plays Allen Robinson doesn't deserve a championship.
That's what I said. I said, listen,
right.
I'm not trying to be mean to you, but this is what should have happened.
Well, you may have had to play Allen Robinson if you didn't have certain options, but come on.
I would have.
No, there are always other options.
Stop
it. This is no. I am the updates.
Love that.
It's like I am the one who knocks from Breaking Bad.
All right, let's get into these Chiefs, into that Tyreek Hill that your husband didn't start.
I was going to say, so he was 6 of 6 for 66 yards. He had a touchdown. He had, again, yet another punt return because that's what Tyreek Hill does.
Unbelievable.
Again, depending on your settings, that may not have counted for you, or it may have. But again, if you've got the Kansas City defense, I don't know how you don't play them when you got Tyreek Hill just returning touchdowns like it's no big deal. You got to play them too. So he was the highest scoring player with 16.8 points. Again, this guy is on a streak. He has basically supplanted the team as the top option in terms of Jeremy Maclin, which I will get to. Ooh, there we go, Brandon. Streak. And here's the deal. Tennessee gives up the most fantasy points to wide receivers. So he should have another lights out game because, again, we got a matchup the dreams are made of for somebody in the playoffs. If you've got Tyreek Hill, it is literally dreams this week for you. So you're absolutely playing him. Again, no excuse not to play him. Some people learn their lesson the hard way. But you're playing him. Now, this is one I'm going to be a little controversial on. Alex Smith. He was, 26 passes, 17 for 26, 264 yards and a touchdown and an interception against the Chiefs. He was just his standard Alex Smith. But Tennessee gives up the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And if we throw out his, the outliers, the top and bottom scores this season, which was 28.2 and 3.64, the ceiling for Alex Smith is 19 points. And his floor is 8. Now, he's had 8 games in double digits. Take a look at your quarterbacks. We've had a string now of 2 bad weeks in a row of bad matchups for some of our top guys that are getting you single points. You might want to stream Alex Smith if he's on your waiver wire, if you've got a quarterback in an incredibly bad matchup. I'm just saying it's something to maybe think about. There should be other guys out there, but if there's not, it might be something to consider. Because again, Brandon's giving me a face. I told you I was going to be controversial on this one. We've had 2 weeks of really bad performances from some of our top quarterbacks. Really bad performances that have lost people their playoffs. So I'm just saying, if you're in a situation and you get crazy, it's a good matchup. Again, your ceiling is 19 points, which is not great. That's your ceiling. But it's a possibility. Give me your thoughts, Brandon, because you're giving me that look.
No, yeah, I'm playing him this week, so I'm happy you said that. I hope he gets me my 19 points. I need it.
Is this your Island of Misfit Toys league?
Yes, it is. And I'm still in it.
Yeah, you are. You are. Courtney is like rocking this season in fantasy.
Ashley's in it too, and Ashley's rocking in this league. She has gotten a crap ton of points every single week. So I am not excited to play her, hopefully, in the finals. I'm hoping because we are.
If you guys are the repeat finals again, is Brad Evans going to kick you guys out of this league?
Maybe.
He should if he wants to win.
Literally, you guys, like Brad Evans from Yahoo has these 2 ladies in his league, and they were both first and second last season, and then they're looking to be first or second this season too. It's crazy.
If he doesn't have us on his show at some point after we've done this back-to-back years, that will be outrageous. We haven't done it yet. I'm just saying.
Well, he did do a whole...
Why would he have us on his show?
Yeah.
I would be embarrassed if I was him. Sorry, Brad. Oh, okay. Finish up with your running backs here.
Anyway,
so we can move on.
Well, Kelce did great, over 100 yards, targeted 8 times. Again, this is somebody that you're playing. Good matchup. Tennessee with the 15th most fantasy points. You should feel good about Kelce. I don't want you playing either of the running backs, though. We've got Charkandrick West and Spencer Ware got virtually the same exact number of points. 6.4 and like 6.6, I believe, are the point options. So basically the same. Now, Charkandrick West, the load was much different this time, which we were nervous beforehand. Well, the load's always been kind of distributed. It's been the snaps. But West only rushed twice, but he was the one that got the goal line look for the touchdown. Spencer Ware rushed 20 times, but of those 20 times, he was only able to get 56 yards. He did have a reception for 7, and if we look at Tennessee, they're good against the rush. They give up the 4th fewest points to running backs. So for me, I don't love this matchup because Ware has not been productive the last few weeks. Again, we got the West situation. I'm not a fan of it. And I'm not really a fan of any of the other wide receivers, maybe Macklin, but he only got 3 targets. The only reason I say you could maybe possibly play him in a flex at best is because Tennessee gives up the absolute most points to wide receivers. But again, the targets aren't there. So it's really risky play in your playoffs to put someone like Macklin in who's not getting the looks that you need.
Boom. All right. Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cincinnati Bengals, one of my favorite games.
Yeah. If you have Le'Veon Bell, congratulations on your playoff berth and how you're doing.
And if you don't have Le'Veon Bell like the rest of us,
yeah.
screw you.
So I had like the highest amount of points other than the guy I went up against in our SiriusXM Dynasty League, and I lost. I think I had 148 and he had 165 or something, and he had Le'Veon Bell. I just couldn't possibly catch up. There was just no way. But I was like 50 more points than the person that won the matchup, the other matchup. 50 more, like not like a little bit more,
huge.
like unbelievable. So whatever, it's fine.
Not bitter at all.
Consolation round. Which, speaking of, Courtney moved on in that, and we'll be playing Howard Bender, the Bleacher Report host. And so I'm cheering for you, Courtney. I told Howard that.
Let's do it. Good.
Or Caroline. Or
Why don't
Courtney
you like your
Richards.
sister?
Right. Why can't you be more like your sister? I can't. You guys, like our SiriusXM show, we had a lead in with him last week, and he made the craziest drop just for us. It was quite flattering, actually. It was the nicest drop we've ever had. Yeah, so congrats, Le'Veon Bell. Clearly you start him. It's gonna be another cold game, not snowy yet. You know, again, this is Wednesday, so the weather can change any moment, but between 24 and 9 degrees, quite the span there. You still starts to Antonio Brown, you guys. Don't get cute. He caught 5 of his 11 targets in crap weather for 78 yards. It's gonna be even better this week. I feel fine with him. You know, you don't listen, the wide receiver position's garbage right now. Everyone's playing in bad weather. You have to start Antonio Brown. Don't get weird. Cincinnati gives up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, but only 7 touchdowns so far on the season. It's about the catches and the yards. I'm not sure I buy that in the cold weather that Ladarius Green is the guy, but a lot of other people are. It's up to you. The tight end position's also garbage, so maybe you're grasping at straws. Last week he caught 2 of his 6 targets for 25 yards against Buffalo. Risky. I'm not playing Ben Roethlisberger. I'm sorry. It's a tough week with a lot of stud quarterbacks and bad weather and bad matchups, but Roethlisberger is just a really low floor guy. Last week, less than 3 fantasy points. In week 11, less than 9. In week 6 and 3, he put up less than 10 fantasy points. He's a single digit fantasy guy if he's not getting you like 400 passing yards. The guy is so up and down, it's insane. And then no one else. I'm literally benching anyone else. Next week they're at home against the Ravens, and it's going to be cold again. This is just bad.
Bad. He's too old to be playing in this cold weather.
Well, they just don't care because they have Le'Veon Bell, so they're like, oh, well, he's crappy.
Yep.
That's fine. We'll just hand the ball off.
It's good. It's good to go. All right, Ashley, Cincinnati.
So you were playing Jeremy Hill. Jeremy Hill is doing exactly what we wanted him to do when Giovanni Bernard went out, where he is taking ownership of this team and running with it. No pun intended, but he is. So he had 111 yards on 25 carries. He also was able to add a little bit of yardage in the air with 31 yards off 3 catches. He was a top scoring player with 20 points, and it's a great matchup. Pittsburgh gives up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. It's not great matchups anywhere else on this team. So much like last week, this is going to be a lot about the rush, not so much about the pass, other than Tyler Eifert, obviously, which we'll get into. So now Rex Burkhead, he had 45 yards. He had 9 carries. 9 carries is actually a pretty decent amount. So we're starting to see an increase in terms of his workload a little bit, but it still isn't detracting from Jeremy Hill because, again, this is going to be a rushing game. So I think there's room to play. You know, Burkhead can get 9 carries, and that's not going to affect Jeremy Hill for you. So don't be too paranoid about that. Andy Dalton, not a great matchup. Pittsburgh's up the 5th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. He had just actually a terrible game last week of 180 yards, but he did have 2 touchdowns, which was his saving grace. So he was able to get you 16.9 points. But in terms of the yardage, it was certainly not there. And that was off 28 pass attempts. So again, other than Tyler Eifert, who was able to get you 2 touchdowns, and was the Tyler Eifert of old that we know and so well, that doesn't really get a whole lot of yardage for you. It's only 48, but he is certainly, as we always said, targeted in the red zone. He is Andy Dalton's man, particularly because we got AJ Green out. Eifert will continue to be that red zone target for him. Now, the Steelers give it the 14th most fantasy points, so it's a decent matchup. So that's where it's going to go. It's going to go to Eifert if we are throwing. Tyler Boyd was the highest scoring wide receiver, but that was only 8.9 points. It's a bad matchup for our wide receivers. Again, we don't know if it's going to be a game.
Ooh.
Is it going to be a Tyler Boyd game? Wins, that's going to play out. I think you're playing Jeremy Hill, and those are the only people from this team. And it's going to be a rushing game with Eifert being targeted minimally in the red zone, but scoring you enough for what you need.
It's the same. Shame, Ashley, can't hear yourself during that segment because you.
Oh no! Really?
It was okay. It was just at the very end. Nobody cares about Brandon LaFell, anyways. All right, we got 9 matchups left. Detroit Lions, the New York Giants.
Oh, Brandon LaFell. I thought you loved Brandon LaFell, Courtney.
I know, I do. I mean, I don't own him, but I do enjoy him.
You know what? I have some sort of wager with Brandon LaFell versus Tyler Boyd. I need to check into who's winning. It's very close. Detroit Lions. Well, Matthew Stafford suffered a PIP joint dislocation with torn ligaments in his middle finger on his throwing hand.
Appropriate. That's what I want to give him right now.
He's going to play through the injury in cold temperatures in New York/New Jersey, and I hate that. And I don't care if he's going to have a custom glove or what have you. I think I'm sitting everyone on this team, and it's also maybe going to be a combination of rain and snow. Sexy.
Mm-hmm.
Look what happened with Derek Carr. And by that, I mean, he was fine right after the dislocation, right? The first game, he was fine because he was in normal weather. Then he went to Kansas City, and he looked like he couldn't throw a football, right? So when you get in cold weather, all your joints get weird, right? I get weird because I'm just old. And, you're just kind of like cracking and things are not in the right place and you just don't feel right. So imagine doing that with like a dislocated joint. No, I'm out. I do like Matt Prater, though.
Yeah, he wins.
Mm-hmm. Still on that guy. The Giants give up the 13th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. So that means that Eric Ebron actually has the best matchup out of everybody on the Lions. But they've only allowed 2 touchdowns on this season. It's all about the yards. And again, if we can't have that dislocated finger thing, I don't know. Theo Riddick was a late scratch last week out of freaking nowhere. Whoa. Ouch. Literally, he wasn't even like a thing. Remember, we like had our show on Saturday night. We didn't even think about Theo Riddick. I was like, he'll be fine. No, he's still not practicing and cannot be trusted in your lineup this week. Just get him out. And last week it was Anquan Bolden again who scored the touchdown. Tate caught 6 passes, 58 yards. Marvin Jones caught 4 passes for 67 yards. I'm fading everyone everywhere I can get. This red hot New York Giants defense is one of the tougher defenses in the league right now over the last month. They give up the 8th fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers on the season, less so if you actually only consider this month. And they also give up the 11th fewest points to opposing running backs. Don't even get me started on the terrible run game that is the Lions. And then as far as the Giants are concerned, on the other side of the ball, Beckham only needed 4 catches to go for 94 yards and a touchdown last week. Always a must start. Shane Vereen suffered a concussion his first game back from injury. It was like, are you serious? So whatever. He's still not out of concussion protocol, but he is practicing. 2 bad games in a row at Pittsburgh and against the Cowboys for Eli Manning. 3 turnovers last week alone. Since their week 10 bye, the Lions haven't allowed a quarterback to score over 13 fantasy points. This is a recipe for disaster. Detroit gives up the 9th fewest fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, so I'm off of Shepard and the 1-catch Victor Cruz. I don't know why they're not going to him right now. It's very weird. And since week 9, running backs have only scored 2 touchdowns against the Detroit Lions. So again, I'm not even going to get into the subject of Rashad Jennings versus Paul Perkins and what have you. It doesn't matter. You don't start either of them. And then do they even have a tight end? I don't think so.
No, they sure don't. Indianapolis Colts, the Minnesota Vikings.
More me.
More you. Can't get enough, Brandon.
Thanks. I know.
Because what are you, Brandon? But you're the update.
Yeah, you're the update.
I am the update. What the? I'm going to start. I don't know if you know, but like Alan Hearns is hurt and they're going to target Robinson more. Like they have all season and he can't do anything with it. 8 drops
your
to 6
Carson voice?
touchdowns.
So good.
It is when he starts on Robinson. Anyway, I don't feel comfortable calling anyone on this team a must start against the Minnesota Vikings playing on their home turf, but I kind of lied. T.Y. Hilton. What a baller. What a baller. All on his little lonesome. I know he'll likely be shadowed by Xavier Rhodes, and that's why I'm not quite super excited about it, but he's consistently good. Last week, he went for over 100 yards and a touchdown. The week before that, he went for over 100 yards. I just don't know how you sit the guy, but yes, it's a tough matchup. You just have to deal with it. Andrew Luck did not practice on Wednesday due to a shoulder and elbow injury. He's not really in danger of not playing, but I don't think he's going to be 100% either. Dante Moncrief hurt his hamstring, was out a lot of the game last week, but he also just didn't look very good. He has kind of relied on the fact that he's had a touchdown in every single game up until last week since he came back from injury. He could get back to that, but it looks a little complicated for me. I don't love it. And the Vikings give up the 8th fewest points to opposing running backs in standard scoring. But Frank Gore is kind of steady Eddie. I'm okay with starting him in a lot of leagues because, listen, last week he managed 41 rushing yards, 2 catches for 33 yards, and a touchdown in the air. I like how they're mixing it up and using him this season. Just solid. I mean, guys, we barely even talk about him because he's so boring, but like boring, solid 10 points.
Yes, I'll take it. I'll take a boring.
And by the way, Dwayne Allen went from having 3 touches to no catches at all. That's the state of the tight end.
3 touchdowns to no catches.
That's 2016 in a nutshell, right? I mean, when will this year be over? That's my question. Actually, it's close. We do know when the year is over, but
it's very close.
We warned you. The decline didn't surprise us, but it's real, and I'm out.
All right, the Vikings, Ash.
So Kyle Rudolph came to life last week with 44 yards and a touchdown. He has a nice matchup this week and should end up as a top tight end. Fingers crossed. That's what we're hoping for. Thielen, he's been coming on the last several weeks. He only had 5 targets, but managed 101 yards. So again, we've said this has been consistently building. We have Diggs ranked slightly higher than Thielen, but I think that I need, to choose between the two of them. I'm going to go with Thielen. Diggs hasn't had a touchdown in 5 weeks. This is a little bit concerning. And if you recall, he was hurt and he just hasn't quite bounced back as we would like him to. Asiata and McKinnon barely make it into our top 35 running backs, and I struggled to even have them that high. Quite honestly.
I agree 100%. People are so into McKinnon. Why?
He has one good play, and one good play, and you're like, oh yeah, and then red zone never goes back to them. It's because there's no.
They
more
don't,
good plays.
and
it's done.
McKinnon is constantly ranked higher than Asiata. Now they're both not great. You don't want to play either one of them, but at least Asiata gets the touchdowns. At least he's the goal line guy. So I've ranked him higher than McKinnon. I've ranked both of them much lower than our counterparts. But if you're going to play one, you got to go Asiata because at least you have the upside of the touchdown, right? That at least he got that. Even though it is a nice matchup for them, they should be no more than a flex at this point. Again, as we said, it's too hard to trust either of them, but again, you may be in a situation where you got to play one, a crazy flex. Let that be Asiata. Although Sam Bradford was the one on the top quarterbacks last week. Don't play games with your playoffs, people. We have him ranked 24, and that is where he should be, which basically should be on the waivers and nowhere in your life.
Nowhere in your life.
Unless you're in a 2-quarterback league, but
maybe. Jacksonville Jaguars, the Houston Texans, the Jags. There is no one on this team, you hear me, Carson, that is worth talking about. Okay.
That's
maybe
an update.
Marquise Lee in deep leagues, but that is it. Lee had over 100 yards last week. This is a tough matchup. Houston gives up the 5th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. I have nothing else to say about this team. Bye.
When I looked through the notes, Courtney, I was like, oh man, Courtney forgot to finish this team. And then I read your note. I was like, oh no, she didn't. Nope. She's making her point.
I'm not talking about Allen Robinson. Stop asking me your Allen Robinson questions. If you're that desperate to play Blake Bortles, you are trying for the last place. And I can no longer help you. Okay, sorry.
I'm out.
Texans.
Lamar Miller is listed as questionable, but he, was last week before, and he put up 107 yards. He's been questionable for weeks now, and he got a touchdown last week and another catch. He should be good to go. You're playing Lamar Miller. It was the option is. We got him ranked 13th. I think you feel fine about that. You can start the defense. We have the Texans ranked 4th this week. It is Blake Bortles. This should be good for you. We should be able to get lots of points. They are a must start. CJ Fedorowicz, we've got him listed as a sleeper. I mean, he's listed as questionable. Again, he's been someone who's been injured the last few weeks, so this shouldn't be a surprise. He wasn't great last week with only 32 yards, but he was at least targeted 7 times, so that's encouraging. We have him ranked 12th, so he's kind of right there on the cuff of whether you actually need to play him or not. But keep in mind, we've got Brock throwing him the ball, so don't really know what's going to happen there. So it's not ideal.
Or do we know?
Yeah, we do. Mm-hmm.
Well, I haven't gotten the update
Don't
every
be
week
coy.
that we still are going to play, that we're still rolling with Brock Turner as our quarterback. Did we get that update this week?
Brock Turner? Oh, that's a Freudian slip.
No, it's not.
Jeez. That's a low
Brock
blow for you, Ashley.
Osweiler.
Holy mackerel.
Just anyway. We
Oh,
haven't gotten that update yet.
so good.
Yet another game without a touchdown from Osweiler. So we're clearly not playing him. His second in just the last 3 weeks. So you're not playing him, period. End discussion. And because Osweiler is so bad, DeAndre Hopkins falls out of our top 40 for wide receivers. He should not be in your lineup. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a bounce back. That didn't seem to pan out too much. Tough matchup, and he can't be trusted. So again, it is what it is. You're not playing him.
Nope, you're not. All right, let's move on to those late afternoon games. Here are the New Orleans Saints, the Arizona Cardinals.
Mark Ingram isn't practicing with a toe and knee injury. He played through those injuries last week, but he only got 8 touches, so it's dicey. Michael Thomas did not play last week. We were warning you guys about this. Limited in Wednesday practice with a foot injury, should play, but will likely see Patrick Peterson coverage. So that and not being 100%, it's kind of a big yuck for me. Listen, this is a terrible matchup for everyone except for the defense, ironically. And Drew Brees has been playing like not Drew Brees, I guess would be the way to put that. 0 touchdowns to 6 interceptions in the last 2 games. It's hard to suggest anyone. I mean, listen, unfortunately, things are not going to improve for him. He's going against Arizona, a team that has yet to give up more than 271 passing yards in a game this season. And then he's going to be at home against Tampa Bay again, and Tampa Bay crucified him. The Tampa Bay defense is on fire a little bit, you guys. Got a problem there. Now, Brees is still leading the league with 4,167 passing yards. He's tied for second in the league with 30 touchdowns. But man, these last 2 weeks are really scary.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you because I'm not quite sure you can bench him either. I don't know. If I start a whiteout, I'm going to feel actually the most confident with Willie Snead, if you can believe that. Last week, he caught 6 of his 8 targets for 85 yards with a bad game from Breeze. So there you go. And I'm not going to talk about Kobe Fleener against
Screw
the Cardinals.
you.
I just no.
And by you, not you, I mean Fleener.
And against the Cardinals. Come on.
Yeah. Silliness. Let's talk about those Cardinals.
Please. David Johnson is so good. And the only reason we're not like salivating over him again is because Le'Veon Bell broke like all the records on the planet. The biggest fantasy news of the week, though, is that Michael Floyd was cut by the Arizona Cardinals after he was arrested on early Monday morning for a DUI and failure to obey a police officer. He was unconscious behind the wheel of his car at a stoplight with the car running. His foot was on the brake, but he was sitting there for at least 2 green lights. He had 3 alcohol-related citations at Notre Dame, the last of which was a DUI. A lot of people think he's going to get picked up by someone, maybe the Eagles. I don't know. I'm saying that, like, listen, we don't need to drop him if you're still holding on to him anyway. I mean, if you've held on to him this long, you're obviously in a really deep league. Don't drop him now. Hold on, see where he goes, because you were crazy enough to keep him anyway. I think this means more work for Gresham.
Gresham.
Yeah, you heard me. 3 games with back-to-back 5 catches, 2 touchdowns in 4 games. I mean, listen, he's more like a 30 to 40 yards kind of guy. But if you're in a PPR league, that's okay. Larry Fitzgerald is Palmer's favorite, but he's been blanketed in coverage. John Brown is still dealing with sickle cell trait issues. JJ Nelson's all over the map. I mean, he's a decent option if you're really desperate. But again, I mean, I just think Gresham's more enticing. The Saints shut down Jameis Winston, but Palmer will probably fare all right. I don't know. 5 interceptions in the last 4 games, but some nice touchdowns too. I mean, listen, he's not Phillip Rivers with the interceptions, 10 interceptions in 4 games, but he's getting there.
He's almost there. Almost.
Yeah.
All right. San Francisco 49ers, the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, this one should be quick because you've not really been playing a 49er week in and week out if you were in your playoffs. You just haven't been. Other than I'm okay with you playing Carlos Hyde. He's been picking up some steam. He had a big game last week, 193 rushing yards, and a lot of that in the first half, and a receiving touchdown. Again, it's a nice matchup. Atlanta gives up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs, so I'm okay with you playing Carlos Hyde. Now, if you're super desperate for a wide receiver in a deep league, you could go Jeremy Curley because Atlanta gives up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, which means that Colin Kaepernick has a chance of having a decent game. Now, you need to be incredibly desperate, or where you were looking for just someone with crazy upside. Maybe you're a Drew Brees owner and you're like, I can't afford 6 points. I might get 6 points with Colin Kaepernick, but he also has a great matchup and he's got a high ceiling in a game like this. I'm okay with that. I don't know what you ladies think. I mean, you're riding a lot on a 49er in your playoffs. And on Colin
You have to be
Kaepernick.
okay saying that you played Colin Kaepernick in week 15 over Drew Brees. I don't think I would be okay with that.
I think
I'd rather die with Drew Brees.
Would you? He's played pretty poorly the last few weeks. What are your thoughts, Brandon? Would you go with the potential upside?
Yeah, Kaepernick sucked over the last 2 weeks too. I think he's kind of lost his
I mean,
mojo.
he at least got 11 points last week.
I see the
for Drew
upside,
Brees?
and I'm not saying he couldn't have it against the Atlanta Falcons, but in week 15, I don't think I'm risking my playoffs on Colin Kaepernick. I'd be okay with Colin Kaepernick blowing up on my bench.
I would play Tyrod Taylor against the Browns though over Drew Brees.
I don't know if I
You would play Tyrod. I would play Colin Kaepernick over Tyrod Taylor.
I don't
know. Tyrod Taylor actually has been rather decent.
Play the guys who took you there. We're talking about wide receiver 3, running back 2.
But the guys that got you there the last few weeks have been scoring 4 or 5 points.
Well, you still
Derek
won.
Carr, 4 points. Russell Wilson, 4 points. 6 points or whatever. I mean, like, I'm just saying, if come Thursday, after the Thursday game, and we've got a Saturday game, and you're looking to set your lineup Sunday, and you didn't have a quarterback go, and you're behind, and you've got one of these quarterbacks that's been consistently single-digit points the last few weeks.
I mean, sure.
I think you should consider Colin Kaepernick. He's out there on the waivers because he's performed so poorly the last few weeks. It's something to consider if you were looking for a crazy play.
If you're in an Amari Cooper situation like week 14, I could understand swinging for the fences.
None of those people.
Your fences would have gotten you 11 points last week.
None of those people made it back alive.
The Amari Cooper people?
Yeah.
I think they may
Derek Carr, Michael Crabtree, they really screwed over a lot of people.
I hope the guy that
a lot of people
Crabtree,
had that stack, Derek Carr and Amari Cooper this year.
And there was the one guy that had the Crabtree, Cooper, and Carr stack. And that guy didn't come back.
That was just sad. I was like, thanks for calling. Bye.
I felt bad.
Have a nice
I felt
holiday.
bad. Our radio show, he was so nice. And I was like, we can't help you. I think if you had one of them, you could have survived because so many people sucked.
That's true. All right, let's get to these Falcons. How are they going to do this week?
Well, I'm going to start everyone except for Julio Jones. You heard me. Even if he does play, he didn't practice today. I can't see them overextending him against the 49ers. I mean, I think they'll either use him as a decoy or just set him right away.
They love doing that with him, which is so annoying. Just don't play him.
Here's a question for you. How many games this season has Julio Jones put up between 36 yards and 105 receiving yards this season?
2.
Between
4.
36 and 105. 2 and 4. Okay. 1.
Wow.
He's either had less than 35 yards or more than 105.
Oof.
One game of 66
Consistency is my
yards.
favorite thing. Julio would not be my favorite this year.
So this is the problem, right? You are deciding, is he going to have a 100-yard game or a 29-yard game? And I'm telling you, I think it's a 29-yard game against the 49ers. And I'm not signing up. And I'm sorry. Just being real. Last week was the first time all season that Freeman didn't get at least 15 touches, and no one knows why.
So weird.
This is too good of a matchup for them not to use him against San Francisco. Try not to get freaked out by that 18-yard outing. It was very bizarre. They're going to go back to them. It was weird because they got up really early. They didn't need to overextend him. This one, I think they will use him. San Francisco gives up the absolute most points to opposing running backs. Mohamed Sanu didn't play last week, but he did practice on Wednesday with the groin injury. I still prefer Taylor Gabriel. I actually prefer him even more if Mohamed Sanu plays and or Julio Jones plays, because it'd be nice if the defense wasn't blanketing him. He was okay, but I think he can be even better. And I am playing Tevin Coleman. For whatever reason, Kyle Shanahan's in love with him. I cannot explain it.
All right, the Oakland Raiders, the San Diego Chargers.
So those Raiders, great matchup for the running backs, 10th most fantasy points to them. Amari Cooper will go up against quarterback Casey Hayward of the San Diego Chargers, who's probably going to be in the Pro Bowl. I don't like that. Limited at Wednesday's practice with a shoulder injury. He should be fine, but man, he wacky doodled you last week. We just were talking about that. Michael Crabtree hurt his finger as well last week, which also screwed you. He was limited at practice on Wednesday. Terrible game against the Chiefs in the freezing cold. Again, it was very clear that Derek Carr's finger went way out there in the cold. It was not cool. But they're both it's in California this week. Yay! And against the struggling San Diego offense. Now you're saying they're not going against their offense. Well, the field position is going to be good because, again, as I said, Phillip Rivers, 10 interceptions in 4 games. He's doing exactly what he did last year and the year before and the year before that, which is imploding the last 8 games of the season. This is his jam. This is who he is. And every year we make some excuse for him, and I'm just not going to do it anymore. And I think that the Raiders will be A-okay, and I'm definitely starting the Raiders defense and Sebastian Janikowski.
Remember the days where Phillip Rivers was like gold in December?
Yeah, those were the 90s, right?
Gosh, they're over. Those days are over.
I was kidding about the 90s. It was like the 2000s.
It was the 2000s. Yeah.
The aughts.
Yeah.
All right,
well,
Chargers.
So we'll start off with the big news, obviously. So in case you were on a different planet last week, Melvin Gordon got injured and is out this week. And I personally lost one of my playoffs solely because of the goose egg from Melvin Gordon. That was a hard one to swallow. But you know what? I think there's a lot of people out there that probably got that one. So we can all, cry together. But there is no timeline on when he will be returning from not only a hip, but a knee injury. He thinks that he could be back as soon as next week, but he might miss the rest of the season. So insert Kenneth Farrow here. He rushed 16 times last week and he had 55 yards, but caught all of his 6 targets for another 23. That's what we like to see. Not great, but again, not bad for a guy that's just thrown into a game that wasn't expecting to play. Quite honestly, I'm pretty encouraged by those numbers.
And a tough matchup.
In a very tough matchup. So I'm okay with that. Now, I guess the Chargers might need to use Ronnie Hillman after all in this situation. He may take some touches away, but again, I feel okay about it. You got to be digging pretty deep if you're going to be going this far. Pretty deep, but something to consider. Tyrell Williams is ranked 13th and Dontrell Inman is ranked 31st in our rankings. Inman has scored a touchdown in each of his last 3 games. He's clearly become a big part of this offense and what is actually going right for the Chargers. Williams has a down week last week, but he, was able to score a touchdown in the last 4 games before last week. So both players have a lot of upside. That's what you want to see. Now, Antonio Gates, he does still fall within our top 10 tight ends for this week, even though he hasn't been very productive the last 2 weeks. Now, yes, Hunter Henry did score the touchdown last week, but Gates still seen double the targets that Henry is. So in theory, he should have the higher upside because of that. Plus, we're nearing the end of the season, and Phillip Rivers has got to get Gates to break this record. He's only 2 touchdowns away. That is it. That is
tying it. Yeah.
From tying it. Yeah. He needs 3 to suppress it, but 2 to tie. It's got to happen. I am convinced that this will happen. So just a little news there. And then Phillip Rivers, as we discussed, he has had the same amount of interceptions as touchdowns the last 4 weeks, which is 10. And he fumbled twice last week. So it might be, a shout out, but I understand why you are tempted to, play him. But we got other quarterbacks out there that are better options, and only look at him if you're in a 2-quarterback league. Our kicker, Lambeau, is ranked 13. And then Travis Benjamin had -2 yards last week. Ouch. So you cannot be playing Benjamin in any way, shape, or form.
Boom. The New England Patriots, the Denver Broncos.
Terrible matchup.
Terrible.
It's like, where do I even begin? What I will say, though, is that you're probably starting Tom Brady. I mean, last week you put up 406 passing yards. You're going to say, well, he's got to do at least something at Denver. I don't know. Supposedly it might be snowing there. What's the weather like right now there, you guys?
It's freaking freezing.
I'm in LA.
Balls.
So I don't know.
It's balls cold. There's like wind. It's so cold.
So here's the deal. I'm actually huge on Blunt. It's the best matchup for the team. He's going to be running all over the place. I think that the majority of the points are going to come from LeGarrette Blount. And Edelman looked bad, by the way, against the Ravens. He only caught 7 of his 15 targets. Those are like Brandon LaFell numbers right there. Whatever, but he did have 15 targets, so you got to look at that. I am not starting Malcolm Mitchell or Chris Hogan against that secondary. I'm sorry, absolutely not. Martellus Bennett is kind of like a dart throw, but the position's a dart throw. I'm not actually starting the defense either, and the reason why is because Trevor Siemian put a back-to-back 300-yard passing games, and the New England Patriots actually give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. I actually am of the mind that Trevor Siemian is not the problem with this offense. It's the fact they can't run the freaking ball. Right. They only allowed 9. They only carried the ball 9 times, the Denver Broncos last week. I think they will improve that. And the majority of that went to Justin Forsett, but clearly they don't trust Booker. I mean, talk about CJ Anderson getting job security by not playing. It's just a weird thing. So I don't know. As some people are really high on the New England defense, and I just thought of that and I was like, I don't know if I'm as high as other people.
I was going to say, who are you covering again? Was that New England or the Broncos?
No, I'm just passionate about. I'm passionate about the Broncos prospects here.
I want to just tell you, Brandon, I have New England ranked outside of our top 12. So I hope you're happy with that.
I am happy with you.
You're welcome. All right, for the Broncos, this is going to be a tough matchup for the Broncos fans and all of us. Because New England and the Broncos have so much history. This is always one of the worst games for me to watch. But I am still rolling with both Thomas and Sanders. Sanders has had 2 games over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown the last 3 weeks and averaging 11 targets a game. Thomas is averaging the same amount of targets, 11, and it just hasn't found that end zone. Either way, I think the Broncos will need both of them to be successful and pull out a must win against the Patriots. Repeat, a must win. Broncos have to win the next few games if they want to make it to the playoffs because they're in the best division in the league this year.
Crazy. Yep.
Mind blown. Denver defense, I have them ranked number 6, which is not nearly as high as I usually have them ranked. So, but you're still starting them. And let's be honest, we're not going to be starting to trade away good defenses for pickup defenses in week 15. For sleepers, it's playoffs. I'm not risking my playoffs with Siemian, even though he's had thrown over 300 yards in both of his last 2 games, as Brandon has mentioned before, and no interceptions, which is fabulous. I agree with Brandon. He's not the problem. But I'm still not going to start him.
It's risky.
No. It's too risky for me to handle it. Brandon McManus, the kicker, is right there on the cuff. And as Brandon had mentioned, because she was covering the Broncos today, on the bench, Devontae Booker only had 3 attempts for a yard and 2 catches for 10 yards last week. 4 set rush 6 times for 17 yards and had 3 catches for 18 yards. Not good for either one of them. I would say that Forsett is most likely going to be the featured back in Denver this week.
Ew.
I was laughing because I called that Forsett was going to have a better game than Booker last week. And I was like, I didn't think it'd come down to 1.8 points versus 1.1 point. But technically, Forsett had a better game.
Way to go.
So bad.
It's so bad. It's so bad. It's just,
Yeah. But the Patriots give up the 9th fewest fantasy points to running back. So it's not only are they not able to run or find the holes or whatever, keep a hold of the ball, but it's a tough matchup as well. So, no. Sunday night game, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Dallas Cowboys, game of the week.
So Mike Evans had 2 down games, but you're still starting Evans every week regardless. OBJ had 15.4 points in standard leagues last week against Dallas, and I don't know why Mike Evans would not be able to have the same. So I think that's just fine. Doug Martin had double digits the last 4 out of 5 games. He's had a nice little resurgence here. So it's a really tough matchup for him, though. Dallas does give the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs. But if Jerick McKinnon and Terrence West can get double digits, so should Martin be able to. That's the encouraging point here. Now, you got to love those shutout games against the Saints. Jameis Winston only had 184 yards.
Shootout. Sorry, shootout. I meant shootout. Sorry. You did it.
Courtney made this note for me because I was working, and I was like, shout out.
The Dolphins.
Right. The Dolphins.
Sure. Well, it's a risky play. You're not playing him. Don't do it. But you can play Cameron Brate. I know he didn't have a great week, game last week, but at the same time, it's a good matchup. Dallas gives up the 9th most fantasy points to tight ends. Brate has had success all season long. And, like we said, this is someone that's got good upside. So he's someone that you can feel good about this week.
Boom. Cowboys.
Oh, gosh, the Cowboys. Fine, you guys. Tampa Bay's defense has been great over the last few weeks, but you're starting Ezekiel Elliott, obviously. I don't know if I'm starting Dez Bryant. You heard me. He caught only 1 of his 8 targets for 10 yards and a fumble. And then he also was part of an interception as well. Every week, I work also for Pro Football Focus, and they put together this thing called 5 Stats You Need to Know. And this week they led with the fact that the Giants defense has been awesome, and specifically Janoris Jenkins and Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. And they kind of attributed Dez Bryant's issues to that. But it's not just that. It's constant with him. He has a 51% catch rate on the season. Now, you're like, okay, well, that he's playing with a rookie, might be an issue. Oh, really? Because Cole Beasley, when Dak Prescott is throwing towards Cole Beasley, he has the highest quarterback rating in the league. It's not, and then Terrence West even. I don't understand what's going on with them. They don't have chemistry. It's just really weird, but they keep force feeding him the ball. And I get it, but this is also kind of a tough matchup. Again, Tampa Bay not letting things go. So I don't know. I'm worried. He's always an end zone threat. I feel weird telling you not to play him, but I also feel weird telling you to play him. He's one of those guys. He's not Allen Robinson, but he's dicey. I guess Dak is another sleeper. I'm not loving him this week. To be fair, I don't really like any of the quarterbacks this week. Again, everyone's on either a terrible matchup or in terrible weather, except for Kirk Cousins. We're going to talk about him in a minute. Tampa Bay has allowed 3 touchdowns so far this season to tight ends. No thank you, Jason Pitton-Witten.
Mitten loser. Loser.
Jason Pitta. No.
Jason Pitta is what she would call him. But
Dennis
you just said
Witten.
Dennis Witten.
Pitta.
Dennis Witten. Yeah.
But Brandon combined it and goes Dennis Pitta Witten.
I don't know. Yeah. It's so good. Yeah. Either way, it was good. We got the point. All right.
The point is they both are.
You don't want to be one of those people.
And you can put Dwayne Allen on that list, frankly.
That's right. All right, let's move on to Monday night game, which you can almost put everyone for Carolina on that list. We have the Panthers against the Redskins. You can start Jonathan Stewart. He's had 4 rushing touchdowns in the last 4 games. 4 running backs have had double-digit fantasy points in the last 2 weeks against Washington. So I'm into that. We have Greg Olsen ranked 5th. He did have 87 yards last week, which is his best game in a while.
The matchup.
Since week 9. Yeah. It's a great matchup for Olsen. Hopefully Newton can get him the ball. He has had great matchups before and has not done well. So hopefully we do not have to add Greg Olsen to the December woes in total. So my sleepers, how crazy is it that Cam Newton can't be trusted in week 15? Super depressing, but this is what 2016 is, you guys. Yeah, and it's even against against the Redskins. They gave up the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So it's a great matchup, but you just can't. He had an MRI on his throwing shoulder on Tuesday. No major injury, but it could explain exactly why he has thrown for less than 200 yards 3 times in the last 4 weeks.
Sexy.
Not good. Not good. I mean, if you're going to take a risk on any of the receivers, it's going to be Ted Ginn. Obviously, I don't even need to talk about the others at all. Before last week, he had a touchdown in each of his last 3 games. So if you're pulling for something, it's going to be Ted Ginn. On the bench, Josh Norman will be shadowed. Calvin Benjamin will be shadowed by Josh Norman. But let's just be honest, he's been awful. Just absolutely awful. So we're not going to do that. Yikes. All right, the Redskins.
Great matchups with the quarterback, wide receivers, tight ends. Carolina gives up the 9th most points to quarterbacks. I have Kirk Cousins ranked number 3, and I feel great about it.
Feel good. Mm-hmm.
7th most points to opposing wide receivers. Deshaun Jackson put up over 100 yards last week against the Philadelphia Eagles. The revenge game / give me a job again game. We loved it. We called it. It's fine. Absolute most points to opposing tight ends. Now, here's the deal. Since week 11, they've allowed 4 touchdowns to opposing tight ends. We're just going into week 15, so you could do that math. Hopefully, Jordan Reed is going to be 100% because last week he only had 1 target because he was hurt. So hopefully that shoulder injury has gotten better. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. I don't love Rob Kelly in this matchup. They give up the 7th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs, and he hasn't gone over 63 yards since week 11. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be an interesting game. I think this is going to be the shootout and the real game of the week. Although we mocked what was it? The Cowboys. Did we mock the Cowboys game as game of the week? I think the game of the week in the mocking way is the Jacksonville-Houston game. Am I right? I mean, that's just disturbing.
I wasn't really mocking. I said the Tampa Bay game I thought was going to be the game of the week. Yeah.
Oh, you meant it for real?
But I meant it for real. I know. No, if I was going to say game of the week, I'd have been like the Rams in Seattle because that's going to be a real competition. You know, I mean, there's way worse games to mock. I mean, Baltimore in general. I mean, no, I was being serious. The Dolphins and the Jets. I mean, now that is game of the week.
Yeah, especially meant more. Jacksonville, Houston. What disaster zones?
Yeah. Really bad. Really bad. Osweiler's the worst thing to hit Texas.
Could be great points for the Texan defense, though.
And they've had a lot of bad things hit. Tornadoes. You know, I mean, just like tons of stuff. Yeah, Mother Nature is not always nice to Texas, but Brock Osweiler is way worse.
Oh, wow. I like it.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. I feel bad as a Bronco girl that we did that to you, but it's your own fault. Well, that does it for us, you guys. That's week 15. Congratulations if you made it into the playoffs. And again, if you did not, don't take last. Set your lineup. Have some dignity. Please. Second to last, at least. Come on. You can do better than that. Make sure to catch our show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 9 to 11 Eastern on Saturday night. We will be doing a show this Saturday on Sirius, but we will not be doing a show next Saturday on Sirius as it's Christmas Eve. My children are assholes. They want me to like hang out with them and stuff. Ugh. Jerks. But yes, so we will be there, and then we will be back for New Year's as well. So we will see you then. Make sure if you have any questions to hit us up on Twitter at HerFantasyFB. Until next time, no more faking it.